The South China Sea, with its long history, has been a witness to territorial disputes, geopolitical tensions, and strategic opportunities. This region serves as a stage for complex dynamics among several countries, including China, Vietnam, the Philippines, and others, competing to control natural resources and strategic trade routes. The presence of artificial military islands and tensions related to resource exploitation rights creates real challenges. However, amid these tensions, the South China Sea also presents opportunities for the U.S. Navy to strengthen its military presence, uphold international freedom of navigation, and build cooperation with regional allies. Faced with these challenges, the United States designs comprehensive military policies to address the evolving dynamics in this region. Amidst the complex dynamics in the South China Sea, intriguing questions arise. What concrete steps can the U.S. Navy take to address challenges in this region? To what extent can regional cooperation play a pivotal role in balancing power? How might the presence of the U.S. military impact the geopolitical dynamics in the Asia-Pacific? Let's delve further into how the United States responds and shapes the future of the South China Sea. History and implications. The military relations of the U.S. in the South China Sea have a long and complex history. The U.S. has no territorial claims in the South China Sea, but has strategic and economic interests in the region. The U.S. supports freedom of navigation, peace, and stability in the South China Sea, and opposes China's exclusive claims over most of the waters. The U.S. began to be militarily involved in the South China Sea after World War II, when the U.S. helped its allies against Japan, who tried to dominate the region. After the war, the U.S. established several military bases in Southeast Asian countries, such as the Philippines, Thailand, and Singapore, to face the communist threat from China and the Soviet Union. In the 1970s, the U.S. reduced its military presence in the South China Sea due to the end of the Vietnam War and the normalization of relations with China. However, the U.S. maintained its security commitments with its allies in the region, such as Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Taiwan. The U.S. was also involved in some military incidents with China in the South China Sea, such as the EP-3 plane incident in 2001 and the USNS Impeccable ship incident in 2009. In 2010, the U.S. announced the rebalancing strategy to the Asia-Pacific, which aimed to increase the U.S. political, economic, and military engagement in the region. One of the main focuses of this strategy was the South China Sea, where the U.S. opposed China's efforts to build artificial islands and military facilities in the disputed areas. The U.S. also increased its defense cooperation with its allies in the South China Sea, such as the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and conducted freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's claims. The implications of the U.S. military relations in the South China Sea for the U.S. Navy's power in Asia are that the U.S. has to face increasing challenges from China, which has the largest navy in the world in terms of the number of ships. China also has a geographical advantage in the South China Sea, as it is close to its bases and resources. The U.S. has to invest more in military technology and innovation and strengthen its alliances and partnerships with the countries in the region to maintain its maritime edge in Asia. Geopolitical challenges. The geopolitical conflict in the South China Sea is a conflict that involves territorial and maritime claims from several countries in the region, especially China, which claims almost all of the waters as part of its historical jurisdiction. This conflict causes tension and dispute between China and its neighbors, such as Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan, which also have claims over some or all of the disputed areas, including the Spratly Islands and the Paracel Islands. This conflict also attracts the attention of the United States, which has strategic and economic interests in the Indo-Pacific region and is committed to maintaining peace, stability, and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. The role of the U.S. Navy in the South China Sea is to demonstrate its presence and support to its allies and regional partners, as well as to challenge China's claims that are considered inconsistent with international law, especially the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The U.S. Navy routinely conducts freedom of navigation operations by sending its warships to sail close to the artificial islands or reefs that are claimed or occupied by China, with the aim of asserting maritime rights in accordance with UNCLOS. The U.S. Navy also conducts military exercises with allied countries such as Japan, Australia, and India to enhance cooperation and defense capabilities in the region. In addition, the U.S. Navy also tries to avoid incidents or confrontations with the Chinese Navy by maintaining communication and professionalism and following the rules of conduct that have been agreed upon. Potential conflicts and cooperation. The conflict in the South China Sea is one of the most complex and sensitive geopolitical issues in Southeast Asia. Various countries have an interest in maintaining peace, stability, and freedom of the seas in accordance with international law. Amid this tension, the role of the United States as one of the main actors in the region becomes very important. The United States has a firm policy towards China, which claims almost the entire territory of the South China Sea as part of its sovereignty. The United States opposes China's efforts to use coercion or force to settle disputes with other countries that also have claims in the South China Sea, such as Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. The United States also maintains the free flow of trade in the South China Sea, which is the most important sea route in the world. The United States will not ask any other country to choose between America or China. America will be very firm, perhaps not much different from the previous administration. However, the United States will also increase its investment and cooperation in Southeast Asia to prevent the expansion of China's influence. America will also maintain its military presence in the region, which could trigger confrontation with China. On the other hand, China and ASEAN have developed a positive and constructive relationship in the fields of economy, social, and culture. China has tried to erase the perception of China as a threat in Southeast Asia by forming the alignment of Southeast Asian countries towards China using soft power diplomacy. China and ASEAN also signed the Declaration on Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea in 2002, which aims to encourage confidence building, cooperation in the maritime field, and the determination of a formal and binding code of conduct. Military strategy. The United States Navy has announced a new strategy to integrate its maritime forces, including the Coast Guard, to counter China's increasing presence in the South China Sea. In the new maritime warfare strategy for the next decade, the U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard have jointly pledged to build an integrated all-domain naval power and called for strengthening maritime alliances. They called China the most pressing long-term strategic threat. The strategy, titled Advantage at Sea and published last month, defines the U.S. Navy's goals as maintaining freedom of the seas, preventing aggression, and winning wars. This strategy also includes efforts to increase local capacity by building a maritime training center in Indonesia and transferring Coast Guard ships to Vietnam. In addition, the United States continues to conduct freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea. The impact of this strategy on regional power balance is still a topic of debate. However, some experts believe that this strategy can strengthen the United States' position in the region and strengthen maritime alliances. However, some experts are concerned that this strategy could exacerbate tensions between the United States and China and trigger conflict in the region. The influence of the South China Sea on U.S. military policy. The South China Sea is a highly important region for the United States and other countries in Southeast Asia. It has vital shipping lanes for international trade and is also rich in natural resources such as oil and gas. However, overlapping territorial claims between China and neighboring countries around the South China Sea have triggered tension and conflict in the region. The United States has long shown concern over the South China Sea and has strengthened its presence in the region. In 2020, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo officially opposed a series of Chinese claims to waters that cover almost all areas of the South China Sea. The U.S. also rejects Beijing's territorial or maritime claims to Mischief Reef and Second Thomas Shoal, in line with the Hague Court's decision in 2016. The U.S. rejects all of China's claims outside the 12 nautical mile territorial zone around the Spratly Islands, citing specifically the waters around Vanguard Bank off Vietnam, Luconia Shoals off Malaysia, areas within Brunei's exclusive economic zone, and Natuna Besar off Indonesia. The risk of military conflict between China and the United States is increasing after Washington strengthened its position in the South China Sea and rejected most of Beijing's claims to resource-rich waterways. The U.S. has no territorial claims in the South China Sea, but opposes Beijing's claims to 90% of the area. What are your thoughts on how the United States should balance challenging China's claims and preventing escalation in the South China Sea? Do you believe diplomatic solutions should be prioritized over military approaches? Feel free to share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section.